Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today we're talking about Daytona USA on the Sega Saturn, released by Sega in 1995 as a launch title for the system. This is one I've wanted to do for a really long time, but it just never came together the way I wanted it to. Daytona USA is not just my favorite racing game of all time, but easily in my top 5 games ever.
I played the hell out of this game back in the mid-90s, and while it's far from perfect, it remains my favorite version of Daytona that's ever been released. There's just something about it that feels a little bit different than any of the other ports or remakes that have come out over the years.
Daytona isn't a complicated game. It's a port of the arcade game with a few extras thrown in, but don't be expecting Gran Turismo levels of depth here. You've got an arcade mode, which is a timed race against AI cars where you have to cross checkpoints throughout the track to add time to the counter. You know, pretty standard stuff. There's also a Saturn mode, which is basically the same thing but a bit more relaxed since there's no timer to worry about. Saturn mode is great for learning the tracks and techniques before heading into arcade mode. Speaking of tracks, there are only 3 of them here to choose from, but you do have the option of playing mirrored versions of them by holding the start button when choosing your track. While beginner is basically just one big loop over 8 total laps, advanced and expert offer some pretty wild turning challenges, and they're much longer, though with less laps total. There's also another hidden mode in the game where you can race a time trial in any of the tracks, mirrored and normal, which is a nice little extra. There are only 2 cars to choose from in the arcade mode, but the Saturn mode has several more to choose from, including some hidden cars that are winnable by performing well in certain races. And if you get tired of driving the cars, just play as the horse. Yep, that's right, you can unlock a horse in both manual and automatic. He's pretty great in all honesty, since he doesn't get slowed down nearly as much as the cars do when they hit the grass. The graphics are a bit dated by today's standards and weren't really that amazing even when the game came out in '95. This was a launch title, and as such, it was rushed to hit the market. Even still, it looks enough like the arcade game to capture the overall feel. The tracks all look decent, and there's still a whole lot of cars on the road. There's also a whole lot of pop-in here too, and it happens right in front of you sometimes, but it never really has any bearing on the actual gameplay at all. The sound design is one of the best things about Daytona USA. The music is upbeat, catchy, and it's just a pure joy to listen to. The game really only has maybe 3 songs to it, but even after over 20 years, people still enjoy it. Where Daytona USA really shines, outside of its amazing soundtrack, is the gameplay. This particular version of Daytona handles wonderfully. It retains the feel of the arcade game while still feeling completely comfortable on a standard Saturn controller. There are a lot of little intricacies to Daytona, especially in the way you handle certain corners with certain cars.
It's got a surprising amount of depth and replayability while also being able to be enjoyed simply like an arcade game. That's something unique that Sega was able to consistently capture back then with a lot of their arcade games and console ports.
I love this game. Love it. It was the reason I was so excited for the Saturn back in the mid-90s, and it fulfilled every hope I had for a home version of my favorite arcade racer at the time. No, it's not a perfect port, but I'm happy that the Saturn version of Daytona is what it is. It's a perfect encapsulation of that era for Sega. Daytona USA, even with its shortcomings, is just really fun to play. It's got personality, and no game since Daytona USA has been quite like it, even its sequel. This is still a pretty cheap game on the Saturn, and I definitely recommend it over the later released Championship Circuit Edition with the altered music and physics. It'll cost you less than $10 on average to grab a copy online, and it's worth far more than that, at least to me. It may not be a game for everyone, but it will always be special to me because of the immense amount of time I spent with it back when the Saturn launched. Matter of fact, I still play Daytona regularly whenever I get the chance.
As always, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, subscribing, and of course commenting. And until next time, stay classic.